So welcome to this session on the future of collaborative finance, the future of investing, looking at the whole collaborative economy or sharing economy, not just what it means for consumption and production and learning and all of that, but really how are we rethinking how we create wealth, how we finance new ventures, how we manage it, and how we think about value. And so I'm really happy to have Danae and Martin here with me today. And I'm going to kick off this session with a few questions of my own, but then we have ample time for audience Q&A as well. So please be thinking about what you'd like to know from one of the world's leaders in crowdfunding and one of the world's leaders in, I don't want to say traditional VC, but in venture capital, traditional financing. And we're going to talk about the contrast and the tensions between traditional finance, new finance, what it all means. So let me start with you, Danae. And for those of you who don't know Danae, you should. She's the founder and chief development officer now of Indiegogo, which is one of the world's largest crowdfunding platforms. It's global. You've facilitated $850 million, almost, is that right?
More than that.
Almost $1 billion of crowdfunding through Indiegogo for everything under the sun, not just products, but creative ideas, life needs, you name it. So she also has more accolades, more awards to her name than I can recount. So I'll hold off on that. Now, Danae is based in San Francisco, as am I, and Martin is based over here in Europe. So we're also going to have a little bit of a geographic, not debate, but discussion about how the US and Europe and globally, how are things shaking out. So Danae, when we think about how crowdfunding, in many ways, it just challenges the traditional investment thesis on so many levels. Who can get access to finance? On what terms? How do you get customer feedback? Like, what's your community of support in ways that we've typically thought about traditional finance? You're working in the world of new finance, yet we're still living very much in a world of traditional finance. And there's this tension and contrast. And I'm wondering, what is it like to navigate the landscape of finance, talking to traditional investors, talking to your community of stakeholders, and is the term collaborative finance even the right one?
Yeah. Well, I think, what's interesting is I always joke that it would have been easier to start Indiegogo had we had Indiegogo to help us launch Indiegogo, because we got rejected by 90 venture capitalists and angel investors before we were able to raise any money, and largely because they didn't see our vision, or we couldn't prove to them that our vision was possible. And so it took years of just bootstrapping and proving case study by case study that the internet was an incredible way to raise money, which when we started, everyone told us we were crazy. No one would ever fund anything online. You're stupid for even trying. But clearly that's not the case. There's now a whole industry with other players and competitors in the space. So I think with every rejection came more fire and ammunition and desire to make it work, because that was kind of the paradigm we were fighting against, was this paradigm where unless you knew the right person or had the right pedigree or just had a certain amount of luck, there wasn't a chance for you. And so I just kept thinking about, I just watched my parents struggle forever. I was trying to help independent creators raise money. And I just kept thinking how many ideas are going unborn because of inefficient access to capital, as well as a system where the capital came to you based on merit, based on proven track record. So we created Indiegogo. Word crowdfunding didn't exist then. Now it does. But what we saw was that, and what we've done is that the way to kind of fix what was broken about finance, which the element that I think was the broken part was really just the gatekeeping model, the model where a few people make a decision on behalf of the many, which we've seen that kind of break down in politics a lot of times. That is the job of a politician, is to make decisions and represent the many. As well as the kind of the problem in the gatekeeping model is that there's only one motivation at play when you're an investor, and that's for profit. And if you actually look at the world and you look at a lot of the businesses that exist in the world, they're solving problems, and there are people benefiting from those problems being solved. and it's not just for money reasons. So what Indiegogo is actually, what we've done is we've created a way for it's the people to decide which ideas came to life, and in distributing that decision-making power back to the people, the motivations that matter to people beyond profit finally had an opportunity to be a meaningful motivator in capital allocation, which that never, when we only were working in a profit-only world or a pure donation world, the motivators of wanting to support people, participate in something, passionate about the project, as well as getting perks, like the actual thing that a lot of people use Indiegogo as a way to offer the perk is the thing that they're actually going to go try to make. So by kind of putting the power back in the hands of the people to let them be the aggregating decision-making force, then what ends up happening is a lot of the motivations for something to come to life, what people want something to exist, can actually have a place to play out, and people can act on it. So that's where I think we've complemented. And in the process, what's happened is a lot of ideas that maybe would have been rejected by venture investors, like Indiegogo was, have now had a chance, proven themselves, and actually they come and end up raising venture capital after that. We've mentioned $1 billion, nearly $1 billion on Indiegogo raise. Well, within that, of entrepreneurs, they've gone on to raise over $300 million in venture capital. So that's all that we know of. We actually don't track that super specifically. Oftentimes customers report it back to us, but so there could be more even. But literally Indiegogo has become this incubation launch pad to then prove themselves, because when people are funding even for a perk, they're saying, I want this thing to exist so bad, I'm willing to give you money before it actually exists to go make it happen too. So it has become a market testing platform, which is why actually there's tension often between crowdfunding and Indiegogo and VC, but there's also a lot of symbiosis, because now we have venture investors like on our platform looking for the next big thing, because what Indiegogo can give to them, as well as the entrepreneurs, as well as the world, is market data, that there's customers out there. On Indiegogo, one of the unique functionalities, you can actually test and swap out perks. So you can actually, in the process, test pricing, test features, test a lot of your assumptions, do the lean startup, but lean funding approach. And at the end of it, you not only have money, but you also have data and insight and knowledge around who your customers are, what use cases will they use your product for, what should you charge for them. And that's just intelligence that no venture investor, no individual, not even me, not even an entrepreneur can get alone. So there's different benefits to the money that you raise in venture versus on Indiegogo. And I think in venture the benefits are still there around relationships that can help you, strategic advice and experience and stuff like that. I just think now, because Indiegogo's entered the world, venture investors that rely just on being, their one value add is we have money to give you, now that's not enough anymore. They have to actually earn the right to invest in companies. And so that's where a little bit of a power shift has started to happen, because Indiegogo has been this place to, in a merit-based way, show you've got an idea that the world actually wants.
So Martin, I think Danae just teed us up perfectly for the question that I wanted to ask you, which is, the flip side of that same coin. So we've seen how, I think not only about crowdfunding, I think also about peer-to-peer lending. I think about mobile banking. I think about all of these other ways that people can connect, transfer, share, create value, wealth, financing, so forth. Against that backdrop, and I think in particular the piece that intrigues me is the traditional role of VC as a gatekeeper. The few deciding amongst the many which are supportable investments, bankable investments. Hearing what you've just heard, and thinking about the contrasts and tensions as well as the complementarities, do you think, in your day-to-day experience at Index, in light of these new opportunities, what is the role of VC compared to what it's been? Do you need to be providing value, obviously in addition to money, but what does that look like? And do you agree with this sense that, I'm curious to know, is it the case that you now are on Indiegogo or other crowdfunding platforms looking to do the later rounds, but that you see your role as perhaps moving a bit further down on the investment horizon? All of that is sort of an open question to where you see the world of finance today.
So I think there are a lot of... Is my mic working? I think there are quite a few questions in what you said. So I hear, I think it's interesting the angle you're taking of kind of a popular or even kind of populist saying that, there is this gatekeeping notion that we are making decisions for the many, and that we are, I don't really see it that way. First, because there's a lot of competition across, amongst different funds, and more so, obviously in the US and then also in Europe. So, as an entrepreneur, you have many different options, and if it doesn't work with index, you can go work with a lot of other funds. So, we don't control the market or own the market at all. I don't think that notion is right. I would also say that there are a lot of topics where, having seen it before and having some expertise does have value. I know, experts are not really in favor these days, but I do think there are some specific cases where it makes a lot of sense. I think crowdfunding platforms are extremely valuable, especially for certain types of businesses. If you have a consumer business, a marketplace business, a business with a large community, I think that's very well suited to raising on Indiegogo and other platforms, because by definition, you need to aggregate behind you a lot of people, a big community behind you, and that's exactly what this platform were designed to be, which us as a VC fund were not designed to be. So I think for those type of businesses, it makes a lot of sense. I think there are some businesses more technical, more enterprise, a bit less sexy, where you need to have proper knowledge of some bits of technology, where I think kind of VC and experts do still have a role. So that's kind of a first, I would say, a first rebirth to your original angle to the question. And then in terms of the relationship and what's the role of VC, I think what was said was very true, that there's a lot of symbiosis, so at every level. So first, those platforms were very often funded by VCs themselves, so Kickstarter, you were. We ourselves invested in a lot of peer-to-peer financing companies. We are investors in Funding Circle, which does peer-to-peer lending. We are investors in Property Partner, which does crowdfunding for property. In Oxmoney, which does peer-to-peer lending for individuals, and so on and so forth. So we have TransferWise, which is peer-to-peer FX transfers. So we've had many marketplaces, and many of them being kind of almost a crowdfunding model. And so I think that there isn't necessarily a conflict, and we are very happy if they do well, of course. And also, we use these platforms for sourcing deals. I think that's very true. We have kind of a data science team which automates and tracks traction that projects can have on these platforms, and then that feeds them into our deal flow automatically. And on the other way around, we also, some of our companies, even either before or after or at the same time as us investing in them, go and raise money on crowdfunding platform. We're investors in a company called Just Park. Used to be called Park at My House, which is again a peer-to-peer marketplace for parking. And we invested in them, and then they went on to raise money. I think it was on the
largest ever, I think.
I think it was at the time it was a large one in Europe, yeah. And so it was fantastic because they had an anchor investor, but then they complemented that with the crowd, with actually their own community, because being a marketplace, they had this very large community that they could tap from. More recently in London, Mondo, which is a kind of next generation bank, even before launching publicly, raised from Passion Capital, which is a seed fund, seed and Series F fund, and then at the same time went on Crowdcube, I think again to raise I think 5 million. I think that one was kind of fully funded in less than 2 days. And so I think we are seeing more and more of that for the right projects, which are popular by nature or needs very large communities. But I think it is a real question of where we sit going forward. But I think if I look at where I spend most of my time on, I spend most of half of my time with my portfolio companies, and actually not sourcing and making decisions on which company to invest in, but helping my portfolio companies hire more people, decide on a strategy, raise more money, and so on and so forth. So I think that part, the community can't necessarily do it as well. You still need someone who is at the end has responsibility, takes a board seat, attends the meeting, work with the entrepreneur, receives the fund. Who are they going to call if they have an issue? Are they going to call Indiegogo? Or are they going to? You need someone who still has kind of fiduciary duty and sit on your board and can be your partner for, we have a 10-year horizon. And if things go wrong, we've seen it many times before, and we don't freak out. We know that happens, and that's what we do. I mean, non-sophisticated investors on these platforms may have different reactions when things don't go so well, and companies may be in trouble, which happens a fair bit in this ecosystem. So I think there's some merit in experience and expertise, but obviously yes, we are leveraging these platforms either for finding new companies or for accelerating our existing companies. Yeah.
Now, I have to say, you just teed me up, and this was not scripted, and this was not something that we talked that much about before. You've teed me up perfectly for the next question for Danae. I want to make a quick clarification. I don't see crowdfunding. It's not about populist finance for me. I think I come from a background to a certain degree similar to Danae. Prior to working in this space, I worked for many years in microfinance. Access to finance for people who are unbanked. So I think about crowdfunding as access to finance to people, ideas, enterprises that are eminently bankable, but that capital somehow it's seen as scarce. They can't get access to it, but not for reasons that make any sense on paper, so to speak.
I would just just get back to that. Sure. I think very quickly, and I do agree that yes, you do rely on one individual. With the VC model, you do rely on one individual falling in love with your project instead of having million and more open. I think that's true. But at the same time, saying you need to have the right connection, you need to have the right network. Of course, it helps, but it should have. This makes sense, right? This is not irrational. But at the same time, I'm just going to give you an example. Last year we invested seed investment in a company called Mignot next door, which is actually based in Brussels. And the CEO he didn't even graduate from high school, and he didn't have any connection. He didn't have nothing. I just read about it in the press. The guy just had a Facebook group, which was just working really well in Brussels, and he had so it was just him animating this Facebook group, and I just loved the concept. I thought it was really cool, and I thought the guy, even though he had zero qualification whatsoever, actually, his previous company had failed, and he didn't even have, obviously, definitely not from university, but not even from high school. We still backed him just because we believe in the model, and we fell in love with his charisma and his personality, even though we didn't have any reference on him. So I think if this guy can make it without even a website or incorporating his company, everyone can do it. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. And I think in particular, having the access, because I do think about an entrepreneur who's struggling with an issue about the business model. They know they can call up the fund. They have a whole team that's dedicated to seeing their success. Who are you going to call in the crowd? I'm not sure. Now,
actually, a lot of the crowd turns up to help.
So I was going to, two questions I have here. One is, when it comes to, I think the first leads to the second. The first one is the sense of, as the crowd, broadly speaking, gets more mobilized and gets excited about having a stake in what they're doing, not just investing in it, but being like, I want to track this, I want to see how it's going, I want to give more than just money. Mm-hmm. What channels are available, if there is, a marketing expert in somebody who's funded a venture or somebody who knows other VC or whatever it may be to make those intros? But then more broadly, if we zoom out and you think about, and I think there's some parallels to what I've seen in my work as well, which is just because you have access to finance doesn't mean that everything else is going to be smooth. And not just the expertise, but sometimes practical logistics, like, okay, I've got a great product, but I can't, challenges getting it to market, whatever, that sort of thing. How does Indiegogo, like you've tackled funding and you're doing a really good job sort of building that out. What else? Where do you take this? What's on Indiegogo's horizon?
Yeah, so when we got into this business, when we started this, our intention was to empower entrepreneurs. And to this day, we've now actually codified in our mission, which is to unite people around the things that matter to them and together make those ideas come to life. So notice I didn't say funding in that. Like, when I started, funding was the big barrier. That was the number one reason my parents struggled. That was the number one reason the filmmakers and theater producers I worked with struggled. But now that we've tackled that. I don't say we're done. There's far more innovation that we're continuing to do to help you build your audiences on Indiegogo, off Indiegogo. Like, the goal is you never want to go to a platform that just offers their own audience. Well, we have millions, which is lovely. The goal is for you to find your own audience. So you want the platform to help you connect with your audience, whether they're on your platform or not. So we've built a lot of tools around that. But then once you're funded, it's now what's next. And so in our journey to help entrepreneurs not just get their start, but actually be successful, we've started to look for ways, how do we scalably bring that expertise and advice? How do we scalably and meritocratically bring opportunity to help not just after funding, but actually make your thing? And so we're really starting to innovate a lot there. One of the latest things we've done is just last week announced a partnership with Arrow, which is one of the largest. It's like a $26 billion company. It's one of those companies that like the biggest company that no one's ever heard of. But what they do is they make a lot of the chips and components that go into a lot of our technology entrepreneurs that are into their products. So specifically within technology, which we do a lot more than technology, but specifically with technology campaigns, oftentimes once they raise all the money and it's time to go actually make their thing, they run into manufacturing challenges, or they're like, I've never been to China before. Who do I know? Who do I call? So we're actually, with Arrow, they have in-house design, they have in-house expertise, tools, feasibility assessments, all this stuff that we're making now accessible to all entrepreneurs. So you don't have to be this perfect, brilliant person that knows how to manufacture in China if you use Indiegogo's resources all along the way. So we're doing stuff, and we'll be doing more around that, but the goal is, again, we want to empower entrepreneurs from idea all the way to reality and not make it dependent. And a good example, though, of this is, we had a campaign owner by the name of, they made these things called cat earphones. I don't know if you heard of them. But basically, they're earphones with cat ears. And the point is, you press a button, and suddenly the music you're listening to on your earphones gets blasted out through your cat ears, and you can do an instant dance party.
Cat earphones. Everyone go look at it. These sound great.
Totally quirky. And this was developed and designed, total fun concept by two young entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs. They were still in college, two women. And they didn't know if this was something that the world actually wanted. And so they came to Indiegogo to raise $250,000, enough to kind of get their first prototype out into the market, start testing. And Indiegogo went crazy. They raised over $3 million. And then they're sitting there like, oh my God, like, we have all this money, we gotta go produce all these things. And they weren't quite ready for the response. They wanted to use Indiegogo to test. And so we have a partnership with Brookstone. And so we connected them up, and Brookstone came in and helped them literally figure out what manufacturer to work with in China, help them augment their design a little bit based on all the feedback that they had gotten from the crowd. They actually were originally going to do, I forget which color, but they had one color in their head that I think it was purple that they wanted to manufacture like crazy. And then because of their Indiegogo campaign, they found that nobody wanted purple. And so they had to, and so they learned that before they actually went to actually produce. So they reduced the number of purples, which was good. It saved them a lot of money. That money spent would have been wasted less later. So anyway, the point is it's through, Indiegogo is not just crowdfunding. It's not just Indiegogo.com. We're really trying to empower entrepreneurs. Crowdfunding is a piece of it. We had to invent it to make the funding piece easier and more efficient. But we're doing more to bring scalable advisory and services and help people navigate all things. And it's not just tech, and we'll be doing more outside of tech too.
Fabulous. Wow. Cat earphones. Who'd blast out?
And the point of me telling this story, though, the punchline, is we then went to actually some venture capitalists and said, would you have invested in these two first-time entrepreneurs based on design on a napkin? And they literally said, no expletive way. And that gets to the biases around any one person. We all have biases. I have biases. Yeah. And unfortunately, one of the challenges with the venture industry is it's really hurting on the diversity side. And because of that lack of diversity, there's a lack of ability to really see all the potential ideas out there. And so I think there's definitely and it's not like a hidden challenge. I think everyone's trying to proactively work on it. I'm not saying they're bad guys there. But it's when you have more diversity, I mean, that's why diversity is important in Indiegogo. Yeah. When you have more people thinking differently, maybe if there had been more female venture capitalists that we had talked to about the cat ears, they might have said like, oh my God, I know that there's a market for that my daughter would buy that. And they hit a nerve with young girls. So who knows? I mean, was it bias? Was it just lack of understanding and lack of context?
Yeah.
Just more diversity will help prevent those. That would have been, if Indiegogo didn't exist, that idea would not be in the world today.
Yeah, and let me just briefly give you a chance to respond to that, and then we're going to open up to questions. So we're almost there. Get your questions ready. But very briefly, not only we didn't talk about it before, but like the diversity issue, which I think is not unique to any
We're all
particular
trying
fund.
to be better at it. Yeah.
Yeah, but also looking at people who are interested in more than financial return. Or, I think about things like social return and environmental return and things in the context of traditional VC as well, which it's there, but it shows up in different ways. And I'm wondering, Martin, just briefly, if you'd like anything you want to say in response to Danae and what she's just said, how you're sourcing ideas, how we're thinking about diversity, how we're thinking about different kinds of returns. And I always, triple bottom line, if you're familiar with that, financial return, social return, environmental return, some combination of those. Is that something that you're thinking more about now than you might have in the past? And how does it show up?
Yeah, so just to respond to the headphone story, I think something that's very specific is that VC is not for everyone or for everything. Given our model, when we manage large funds, the model only works when you hit the very, very large outcomes. The billion, in our case, given the size of the fund, the $1 billion plus kind of exits. And I think that's why a lot of these projects, which are really cool projects and have a real market and a real need, may just not, I think it's still unproven whether that can be a $1 billion company. On that one headphone, probably not.
The $1 billion cat ears.
It's, who
Or
knows,
maybe
it's happened before.
And maybe it's not their goal to be $1 billion.
Exactly,
they just want to find their market, however
Exactly.
big their market is.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think there are just different people. I think we have to realize that there are different type of financing and different type of places to go to raise money, and depending on what kind of companies you want to build. If you want to build a lifestyle business, you can just raise from friends and family and some angels, and then keep it small and grow it, and but very profitable and have a really good living and a good outcome at the end. So it's just like there are different types of company and there are different types of places to raise money for it. On your second question around the kind of the social impact or impact investing, I don't really see it that way because for me, every successful company is building a product or a service that the world needed. If people are paying for what you're offering, it means that you are making their life better in whatever way it is. Whether it's making it more fun, or because you're saving them time, or you're saving them money. So in a way, you're making the world a better place. You're just making it more fun, or you're making it more efficient. And it has value in whatever you do. And I think, so that's the first thing. I think by itself, entrepreneurship, whatever you're doing, is I think is
We're going to move to Q&A.
has an impact. Yeah.
Okay. No questions.
Who's got a question? No? Oh, there was.
We got a couple to be continued.
So, in crowdfunding, you have the challenge, I feel, that you have a certain user base. And there's two questions I have for that. How do you ensure that that user base has a representative group of all kinds of group that there are, all kinds of subcultures that there are? And if you cannot ensure that, which I guess is very difficult, how do you approach people outside of your active user base? People that never used a crowdfunding platform or do it?
No, we actually we think and talk a lot about this internally. So first step is one of our core principles is inclusion and open. And so with that, we've from the day one we've been open, and meaning we don't require an application. Anybody can join. We have a trust and safety team on the back end. If something's suspicious, illegal, or whatever, we take action. But you're innocent until proven guilty. And I think that's the biggest difference between us and even other platforms that require you to apply and you have to get approved. Again, it's the same gatekeeper type of process, which we want everybody to have a chance, a chance of success. And then within that, then, we also do a lot of work about ensuring meritocracy. That's another core principle of ours. And so we've developed a thing called the GoGo factor, which is a measure of how hard you're willing to work and how much your audience actually cares. And those are, we feel like, are the only two factors that should really matter in entrepreneurship. If you're willing to work your butt off and get your idea out there, and there is an audience that actually agrees with you that this thing needs to exist, then you should be rewarded for that. And so campaigns with high go-go factors automatically get more promotion. And we right size for different size campaigns. So a $5 million campaign or $4 million campaign like the Kaiser that just ran out of Amsterdam for an inflatable air lounge, you can see them having a similar go-go factor to maybe a smaller $10,000 campaign, because it's all related to like what your goals were and all that stuff. And it doesn't mean bigger is actually better. So, and we do a lot around recommendations. So if people like this campaign, we share other campaigns, so we help with discovery. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of innovation we're doing. There's a lot more that we want to be doing. So I think then, the next challenge is who are we not reaching and why are we not reaching them? And, I would say we're in Africa right now, but we're not nearly at the penetration of all the entrepreneurs there. Like there's so many. I went to Ghana once. I worked on school feeding programs there. And the thing that astounded me the most about this country was how everybody was an entrepreneur, hustling for something, because that was the only way to make a living. And so there's entrepreneurship everywhere. And so thinking through what are the barriers, or why are we not reaching?
Guys, we really need to.
A lot of them is internet related. So I'll just shut up and
Next
access
question.
to technology and
It's
stuff.
extremely interesting. Sorry. So thank you so much.
Thank you.